Everything we know, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Simulationist podcast. This is the 216th iteration of the show, recorded on the 1st of November 2016, and I am Josh Trelevin, and with me I bring you the
co-host
voice of...
extraordinaire, Ryan Kirkby.
I bring you Ryan Kirkby. There he is. Be-listen. What is the word for be-listen? Like the equivalent?
Bespoke? No, that's what
no.
I'm doing it. I bespoke that. Behold.
Behold.
At least in your mind, you must hold this in your mind.
Yeah. Now I want to... Now I almost want to pause the podcast and look it up.
Well.
Never mind. Behold.
Yeah.
Well, it might just be listen. Listen. Yeah.
Listen, in the style of the golden age of radio.
Yeah. Well, we're in the golden age of podcasting right now.
I know. Isn't that a weird thing to think about? Like in 80 years, someone will be like, "Oh yeah, man, you got to listen to the old podcast if you really want to get the real experience of the whole thing, man."
Yeah.
So like that's the weird thing is because we're aware of it. Like hello, people 80 years in the future. Like, thank you. Like, I don't know what things are like there, but hopefully it's not as bad as 2016 has been.
Do you think, because it moved from kind of radio shows, I guess, to podcasting, which is sort of on demand, so that was a shift. Do you think there's no more shifts to be made? Do you think it's just podcasts from here on out? Forever into the future?
Well, see, that depends on how intrusive you want your technology. Because, I mean, you could always have that, VR experience sort of thing about what the story is like. But that does interfere with what else you can do as you're doing it. And one of the great things about radio is that you can do all sorts of other things while you're listening to the radio.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about podcasts is you can do all sorts of stuff while listening to your podcast.
Yep.
So, this intrusive technology will have its place. It'll probably wind up, doing some great things for movies and the like. But I can't see it doing too much more than what it is right now, without fundamentally changing it. Unless there's something where you're like, oh yeah, I just put it in my brain, all of a sudden it's incorporated in.
Yeah, you just now have the memory of having listened to that thing.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
It's good, but I mean, it's it still doesn't fulfill that thing of the urge of while I'm doing this task, I want something to listen to.
Yeah.
So what good is getting it in oh yeah, I remember listening to that before, now I guess it's quiet now and I got nothing to do but my other things, and there's still nothing to listen to, but I have the memory of it.
Because it takes about 5 seconds to download a podcast. If you have
you
really
got a good
fast
connection.
internet.
I mean, if you're still doing dial-up, it might take a wee bit longer.
Yeah.
And if someone rings, it's like, how dare you phone me?
Yeah, but I was...
it shouldn't take too long at all, man.
So basically that's... Well, I guess that's why they talk about the singularity being this place where we can't imagine what life is going to even be like after that, because the things we do now to kill time, it will be just irrelevant. You'll just, if you want to know, what happened on a TV show, you just download it, and you just now you have that story.
But it doesn't give you the whole atmosphere of it. I mean, one of the things that was keeping the movie industry still alive in the theaters is the theater experience.
Maybe.
A comedy is so much better with other people. I remember going to see the movie Kung Fu Hustle. Were you there with us?
Did I watch? I think I did watch Kung Fu Hustle with you.
You, you, me, our friends, and then there was 6 other people in the theater because I don't people are stupid. They should have been packed. Mm-hmm. But between the people laughing, between us laughing, it was so loud with just these 10 people in the theater that it was a good thing the whole thing was subtitled rather than dubbed, because there was some stuff we would not have been able to hear the lines of dialogue over the laughter. And it was just that how it feeds on itself. Were you with us when we went to see the Ring in the theater?
No.
That was a great experience to have with friends. one of our friends was Kelsey was pregnant at the time, and she wound up having a premature contraction because she was so nervous at one scene. Didn't start anything more than that, but it was just some extra contractions. My brother Adam, his heart hurt after it was done, and it was getting those extra experiences of watching the horror movie with good friends in a theater situation, you know, like, and seeing the jump that gets everyone else in the theater too. It was great. It makes it more so.
But you're forgetting that you could just have that memory at this point. You can encode that too as a memory and just implant that memory of you going to the movie with your friends.
But it's not the real memory of being there with your friends.
It doesn't have. I mean, it's as good as real.
But here's the thing: is like if everyone takes the memory experience and it's all the same, who sat on the left?
Well, they could incorporate that into the experience of it.
That seems too tailored, though, man. It's like if you're going to do that, just go see a bunch of people in the theater and let them watch. It's a post-singularity, man. It's
well,
like,
I mean,
really
I guess
like,
we
what
will
else you gotta do?
Have lots of resources and time, so I suppose we can go do that, yeah. Or we can just sit at home and be fed through a wire or a tube or whatever all of these fantastic experiences even more cheaply.
And there is a spot for that, especially with that cheaply aspect. You did tingle a nerve there, Josh. That's the thing is at a certain point in time, like you have to say to yourself, no, I want what's real and unique. And
well, I mean, you and I
feel
that because we're born in a world where we have things that are sort of tangible and real and stuff like that. But, you know, a few generations down the road and kids will be like, well, whatever, Grandpa.
But that's the thing is, like, it will cohesify, you know, the culture. Because back in the day when you had only like 3 major stations broadcasting stuff, there's like a 33% chance on rough average that, like, if you talk about a show, that someone else has seen it.
Yeah.
And now that things are breaking down and there's like so many channels, so many specialty things, and you know, like you got to pay extra for this thing here and that there. Like, I can't talk with like some of the customers at work about that Doctor Who spin-off series that has just started up because I don't have space on my my program, and I'd have to download it illegally if I wanted to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that fractures like the cohesiveness of
yep.
society. So as much as I'm arguing against this, everyone has the same experience. Having that out there, I will say, would make everybody that much more closer. But I'm learning as I get older that maybe, you know, like that might be a good thing to have, you know, a little bit more diversity in your culture, because that way you don't have an us versus them mentality so rigidly enforced.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah. Even though it will be the case that media can be consumed in the time it takes to download it and install it or whatever, it will also be the case that, like, we're producing things like books and TV and radio at such a huge rate that nobody can
no
consume
one person can read all the books.
Yeah, and I think it's probably the same for television. It might be possible to watch every single show ever made.
Cut the commercials out. It's still getting pretty hard. Like you definitely have to cut out the specialty stuff. No home and garden stuff.
Okay.
No cooking stuff.
Yeah.
You'd have to focus it on like a specific sort of genre in order to make sure you get everything put in and digested.
Okay. Yeah. But even so, like at the rate we're producing culture, though, we're going to produce it so fast that it'll even be impossible to even download like every piece of culture.
You can't download it fast enough to put it in.
Yeah. Although the other thing about producing culture is we'll probably get to the point where we're making it procedurally, like it'll be more video game style. So a single piece, like an experience, will not just be, you won't just have it one way. You'll have it like all the ways that a video game can go in.
Interesting. I can see that, but I don't know. In the end, you know, like, and besides, figure this though too, is that not only is there the content being produced, there's also the content that has already been produced.
Yeah.
I've been watching Svengoolie on Saturday nights for a number of years now, and it's only now where I'm at the point where I have seen basically, like all the stuff he's showing right now, if something new comes on. Oh boy, it's something new.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me a long time, like literally years of watching, like Saturday night to watch all the Frankenstein, all the Dracula, all the Invisible Man, all the, the werewolf stuff from the Universal vault, as well as a few things from the Hammer horror series. And that is just like so you got to keep in mind, like, not only is there the stuff that's being produced, but also stuff that also is the classics. And there's something to be said about watching that and doing it in the old style, of like actually sitting down and watching it at a special time. It does change how things are. I don't know if it's a big thing or if it's my just like nostalgia. I want to do this the old timey way. Oh yeah.
Well, I don't know if we're going to reach. Well, the singularity is supposed to happen in what,
2012,
13 years, I think, from now. It's like 2029.
Well, that's when they're saying it now.
They
did say back in 2012 it was supposed to happen.
Well, no, the singular, like that was the end of the world. Different thing.
There was some also forecasts about like a singularity.
Oh, did somebody?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
the guy who did the stoned ape hypothesis also had the 2012, singularity.
Was that Ray Kurzweil? I think Ray Kurzweil has the 2029 thing.
I cannot remember the name. All I remember is that he's connected with that stoned ape hypothesis.
Okay, I can't remember that.
Oh, the concept of like, here's the thing. If I say a word to you that doesn't have an objective component, like book has an objective component. Mask has an objective component.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was to say theology, that doesn't have anything concrete like with it, right?
Oh, it's not
abstract.
associated with an object, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
yeah.
abstract.
Abstract noun, yeah.
How did that get into our heads? How did the concept of like something abstract, a word that means something that isn't there, exist?
Oh.
And the guy came up with the concept of like, well, once upon a time, what if there were humans and they wound up eating like psychedelic mushrooms that cause synesthesia, so that like your senses like mix over, so that if you hear something, you see something.
Mm-hmm.
Like how I could say something like intangible for a concept and you'd get it. Like it would like get into your mind the same way, like this thing, like it could be like a rock. Like here's a rock, feel the rock, the rock. And like that's how it worked with synesthesia. You could like sense these things that didn't have any objective components. And then for whatever reason we either overate the source or we just like it just wasn't there as we moved elsewhere. But we still had like the stuff in our brain, and that we could teach it to other people if we teach them early enough, which is a proven thing, that people who don't get exposed to these concepts after a certain time do suffer from severe learning disabilities in trying to get them later on in life.
People have to be taught abstraction?
People have to be taught a lot of things before the age of 5. Otherwise, it gets progressively harder to learn. There's a very key time frame. So like, how would an adult learn how to make up a new word? Back in the like the Stone Age era. And so like those, we were all stoned apes, man, just talking like, and it was like I say a word and it means something. So like it was, oh wow, man, like I get it, and I'll keep repeating this word, and I'll keep getting like this image in my mind. I can see what it means. And then once like we're back to normal, like no longer stoned, it still has an impression on us, and that's how we got abstract thought in our heads. Okay.
Yeah.
And there is no proof on it, but a lot of the scientific community does acknowledge of like that is a really good concept, and if nothing else, it works as a thought experiment. Kind of like Plato's cave stuff, right? It's like there's no proof that actually ever happened, but you know what? It's a really good thought thing to get in your head.
Well, and my thinking is that those things are probably happening at the same time. Like people are eating psychedelic mushrooms. We know that this happens, and people do this.
They're still doing it today.
And at the same, parallel to that, we're developing abstract thought. So
maybe that's the next step from podcast, man.
What?
You have to take, like a psychoactive, like a substance in order to have everything appear like as it's supposed to be, and it's not just the words being spoken, because it'd be like 3D. Like we can watch a 3D program, but if you're not wearing the 3D glasses, you don't get like the whole thing. It all looks a little blurry. So the future of like the podcast thing will wind up being like, you can just listen to it, or if you take like the whatever so you take your pod tab, like a little tab you put on your phone.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Then it gives you like the whole it'll adjust your mind so that you can get the full experience of what's trying to be broadcast through just words into your mind.
Maybe.
It does kind of remove the aspect of you can do other things while you're tripping out, right?
Well, other things, yeah, and also like I find it hard to imagine like how you control the exact experience that people have.
Well, there might not be an exact experience sort of thing, but like there is a precedent for this of like like getting stoned and listening to music.
Yeah, and like
there's like the whole concept of stoner music.
Yeah, people have made albums, for example, and sort of recommended.
And they've been doing this since like the 70s.
Thing to do with it.
Yeah. Apparently, I do not get Pink Floyd because I have never listened to Pink Floyd unless I've been stone sober.
Stone sober? Oh, wait, oh, stone sober. So not.
That's the thing. I haven't even listened to Pink Floyd while drunk. So am I truly getting the Pink Floyd experience, man? I don't know. Now I got to question it. It's. I'm doubting myself, man. You've raised up some deep questions.
Probably not.
With this.
Yeah.
Dang, man. Because I mean, you could think about it like they do have the riff tracks where you rent the movie, or you get you have the movie, you buy the movie, and then you play riff tracks as it's starting up, and you get like the whole thing like with the Mystery Science Theater sort of thing where people are doing like jokes and whatnot at the right time. So like you could listen to riff tracks as like a podcast, but you're not going to be getting the whole experience.
Yeah.
Whereas if you watch it with the movie, then you get the complete experience.
Maybe that's what, like in the future when people have like basically you've got to the point where you can download every piece of culture ever made, like books, movies, TV shows, even
art,
video games,
philosophy.
Yeah, art. So you download that, you have it all in your mind. So it's as if you've lived 1,000 years and been able to experience.
You've played
every
1,000 years of video games, maybe.
But all it compressed into say you're a 30-year-old in the year 2100.
Okay.
So, but yeah, you've lived this rich cultural life, experienced everything humanity has to offer. So then maybe your recreation is to mix and match, like you're saying, riff tracks. But you can like mix and match entire because you've already seen the movie, right?
Yeah.
But now you can watch 2 movies at the same time, or 3 or 4 or 8 all together at once, and just see what emerges.
The patterns that go on through.
Yeah, and because you already know, you don't need to pay specific attention to each one. But what would happen if you
dig it? Dig it.
There you go.
Layering.
Yeah, and I guess you can.
So then there'd be artists that would specifically make stuff to be played while this is also happening, like riff tracks.
Yeah, I'd say that would happen. Yeah.
Okay, so for those of you like in 80 years in the future, over in 2096, I really hope we got something close, so that way it seems like we're wise and not like, oh my God, they were so far off. This is hilariously bad. You are welcome to laugh at us. I'll accept it. Anybody who tries to predict the future, even on a casual basis, deserves a little bit of laugh in hindsight.
I mean, I think your psychedelic bit was particularly out there, but we'll throw that against the wall too, maybe.
Well, I don't know if it'll be completely psycho, sort of thing, or if it'll just be like they put other stuff in there, whereby like by listening to it while you've got your pod tab, effect going on. Then it produces more effects, like things like get like more like profound, or more like you get other layers going in on that. I'm not gonna like figure out what the heck that is, man. I'm just the idea guy here.
Okay. I imagine like my other thought too is that how people will spend their time, like how you'll waste time, but how you'll
vast wiki wars trying to edit things perfectly.
Well, maybe. But I was thinking, actually, it'll probably be more like video games. It'll be more like, or simulations, I guess, at this point. We'll be running things that nobody's prepared ahead of time, so you can't, like, download what's already happened, and it plays out in real time, so you're kind of experiencing a thing.
But then how will Let's Plays continue on?
Oh, well, sure. Well, why not, just have, like, Twitch style, like, stream it live and just have somebody's operating the main character.
You're
or whatever,
just there for the ride.
and then an audience members, and they can come and go.
That is an incredibly good way to create a bunch of like sheeple who are like who get like effectively programmed just to follow, never to take the lead.
Maybe. I've sat in on a Twitch, watched somebody else play. And I watch people play video games on YouTube. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't do it a lot. I don't know if there are people out there who just, that's all they do is watch other people play.
There are some people that just don't have the time to invest 80 hours into a game, and they'd rather just do like a 12-hour Let's Play.
Also, with kids, what often happens is, well, the parents will say, well, no more video games or something like that. And they'll say, well, I'm not playing a video game, I'm watching YouTube. That's a different thing.
I'm watching somebody play a video game.
So they get their fix in just by, watching someone else.
Fair enough.
But of course, there's some things we might end up talking about skill in video games, but some people are very good at video games. And
I am horrible at jumping.
And sometimes you just want to watch, that's how you sometimes get into watching certain people play games on YouTube, is they do a tutorial. This is how you do this. And they show you how to do it, and then you can go and do it on your own.
Fair enough. So as I say, like a good welcoming tangent, I believe. Prophecy about the future.
We haven't even started stuff yet? We already...
No. I do have a quick, I guess, not quite conspiracy sort of thing, but
okay.
Something I did realize this week. I've been watching the Yogg's Labs with my daughter as we have our breakfast, and all that fun stuff, and it's been going pretty good. But it wasn't until this last week of watching Svengoolie, it was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, the one that's also got like Dracula and the werewolf, that it suddenly clued in on me. The Yogg's cast guys, Lewis and Simon, they're Abbott and Costello. My daughter gave the same, no, you listen, to Costello, that to Bud Abbott and Lou Costello.
Well, they are a comedic duo. So.
I know, but there's the whole thing about like, no, you're not doing what you're supposed to. It's like, you said that one about Simon Honeydew 12 hours ago this morning. I was like, my God, I see it. The parallels work up, and that's why they work so good, and that's why they're so entertaining.
So there's something conspiracy about that.
Not
Maybe
quite conspiracy, but it's like patterned, something that is like a profound pattern. I realized it's not as though they're the fresh, like this has never been done before, but they are redoing effectively the Abbott and Costello sort of styles. Simon, Honeydew, winds up playing the lighthearted, happy-go-lucky sort of buffoon, where things eventually wind up, coming out all right with him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas instead of like Abbott, just really reaming in on that one, with a harsh thing, Lewis is more like, don't worry about it, sort of thing. So it is it does take a much less, I guess maybe a semi-abusive perspective, because Abbott and Costello was almost like, do this, I'll smack you around, do that, smack you around.
Yeah.
There's much more like, oh, don't worry about it, we'll take care of that, we'll make sure this happens, sort of thing. So it is much more positive oriented. But just, it occurred to me, it's just as I realized that, like, dude, this is why my daughter's, like, watching Abbott and Costello so well. I've effectively trained her by showing her the Yogg's cast. Blew my mind for just a second there. And I thought I was already going to have my mind blown by watching such a good movie. It was just like, no, man, I got left-sided, and you're right out of left field there, man. Just got blindsided.
Did you ever hear that there was a Kevin Smith? It was probably one of his podcasts. I guess it's very hard to.
He's been doing it for a while, so there's a chance, but I don't know.
It's very hard to go back and find something actually that you remember Kevin Smith saying now, because there's such a huge. It used to be. You'd be like, oh, Kevin Smith said that. It must have been The Evening with Kevin Smith.
Yes, or Evening to Evening Hard.
Yeah. Official release, like, it's Kevin Smith telling stories. There's only those, so it's probably on one of those. But yeah, now that he's got a podcast, it's like, where did he say that?
200 iterations themselves.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, where is that?
But at one point, Kevin Smith mentioned that someone at the studio that he was working with, they said to him, Abbott and Costello, you went and fought all the like you're saying, Frankenstein.
And Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Yeah. The studio that Kevin Smith was working with at the time had the rights to things like Freddy and Jason and stuff.
Oh.
And that was somebody had pitched this to Kevin, and I don't know why he didn't jump on it. I guess he was like, oh, I didn't want to get tired of, because people were already saying Jay and Silent Bob were like tired and played out and whatever, and they're tacky or.
On the other
whatever.
hand, Freddy versus Jason was a very well received movie.
And it was, and that's.
I would have loved the original ending where they're fighting in hell and Pinhead comes up and asks them what's going on. Because, that would have just, my nerdy little heart would have skipped a beat.
Somebody pitched to Kevin Smith, why don't you do Jay and Silent Bob versus Freddy, and then follow up Jay and Silent Bob versus Jason, and then whatever other monsters you can find.
I can do that. I can see that sort of thing being a thing. It does require, however, reducing the lethal nature of the monster. If there's one complaint I might be able to formulate out of Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, it's that Dracula was not as mean and calculating. There's scenes where he gets up out of his coffin and goes and he hides in the background of the wax museum. And so he just looks like, well, he belongs in a wax museum. He's a vampire in a wax museum. If he stands still, it looks right.
Yeah. Okay.
So they open up the coffin. Oh, look, there's nobody there. It's just your mind playing tricks on you. I'm going to go off and do this. And then later he gets back into the whole coffin sort of thing. And it's just like, what was the purpose of him getting out of the coffin except to help pull the joke? Why is he moving his coffin around here and then moving it back again if it's to do anything other than,
Probably was just for the joke. I mean.
It was, sort of thing. And that's, it makes him somewhat less lethal and intimidating a villain in that regard because he's pulling off something for the purpose of a joke. In which case, Kevin Smith may have been very wise in passing that up because, Jay and Silent Bob, meet, Freddy Krueger. Freddy would have been, less of a villain because, villain's only as good as the heroes he goes up against, just as a hero's only as good as the villains he goes up against.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have had to have been something, a little bit lesser in that regard for Freddy, which is maybe not the best argument because Freddy Krueger is a bit of a wisecracker who does stretch things out as long as he can to help heighten the fear.
I guess, maybe Jay and Silent Bob don't have to survive the movie. I mean,
that would be an interesting, a third act twist, like the very end. There was kind of a Jason Mewes-ish character in the Freddy vs. Jason one. There was the stoner kind of guy who, I was watching this, was like, damn, man, Jay Mewes could have just rocked this role to the ground. But, instead, I guess it was, a Jay and Silent Bob inspired character.
Yeah.
And, the fact that, when I was talking with my friends after seeing that sort of thing, we all agreed, dude, that was pretty much Jay. So maybe it's something to be said, okay, here's these characters, I give them out to the world, and then if you guys want to do characters like them in your, horror movies, as, like secondary, comic relief characters, so be it.
Yeah, well, I'd say Jay and Silent Bob as archetypes. I guess the combination
the
is
stoner
kind of
duo. I don't think has been as good as anyone except Kevin Smith has pioneered. Because I'm not sure if you ever saw the background stuff for the Clerks animated series.
No.
Oh, okay. For those who don't know, there was 6 episodes made, only 4 actually were shown on ABC. ABC gave Kevin Smith the runaround, and it all went to pot. But there was a huge issue that they had initially in the artists' drawings. They got a bunch of artists come in, okay, draw, the characters. And they kept drawing Jay as this horrible, evil guy. I guess what you'd imagine, a cartoonish drug pusher would look like in a cartoon. Until someone, drew him as basically, he's a child just in a man-sized shape. And then everything else kind of followed suit for how they look from that simplified, innocent design. Because, say what you want about the characters, but Jay in all of in the movies is not a bad guy. He's innocent. He doesn't even really realize that what he's doing is vulgar, uncouth, or wrong. He's just him.
Yep.
And so once that finally got put in as a drawing for a concept, everything else came in for like the art style is how everything fell in, and that's why it looks as it does. Is because the one guy realized no, you're not a bad guy, you're just the foul-mouthed innocent. And so that's something I guess a lot of people have a hard time realizing when they look at it. It's like, yeah, he's selling drugs, he's doing the weird, crazy stuff, and he actually spent some time in jail. But you know what? He's innocent. He's just like impulse, like control. There's no real forethought on his actions. And that does change things out a lot when you realize that aspect of it. So. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, the stoner archetypes.
Yeah.
A lot of other people would if here's the concept. You've got two stoners. Would they be portrayed as innocent and goofy? Maybe to some degree. I mean, Dazed and Confused really helped out with that. But a lot of people would have had them as somewhat nefarious, and because it's a movie where there's a slasher villain going on in some cases, they would be one of the first ones to go. Cause,
now I see where you're going with this. Yeah, with the horror movie, because it's the guy who smokes pot or the
he's one of the first ones to go because it's like, dude, you're not pure, so you can't survive the movie.
Yeah.
But when really, if there's anyone who's going to wind up surviving a horror movie, it would be them because they qualify as innocent as almost anything else.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, maybe whether or not you partake in certain substances doesn't necessarily make you innocent or experienced. Although it does add to your experience factor quota.
But that's the thing
is
when you look at the roles you see in a horror movie, who's the one most likely to survive? It's the innocent, usually a girl, who's a virgin. Sort of thing is the one who wind up surviving, and maybe her boyfriend who doesn't pressure her into sex. Other than that, all bets are off for anyone else. Whereas, if you put the Jay and Silent Bob characters in, they stand a good chance at surviving because of their innocence. Also, their ability to come up with traps and designs in a Scooby-Doo-ish fashion. Thank you, Mallrats, and their desire, not necessarily desire, their what's the right word I'm looking for? Their character trait of willing to beat somebody, as opposed to just running away from everything. That's not something you see a lot in Scooby-Doo, sort of thing. You don't see Shaggy and Scooby just wailing on, the minor 49er with a pair of baseball bats. But it does give Jay and Silent Bob an unexpected twist edge on them for surviving. Listen, running's not helping out right now. Let's quit running and do something else. That's something that's going to help you survive in a lot of horror movies if you think that way.
Yeah, well, I remember in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, they go to all the houses of the 14-year-olds and younger who are talking bad stuff about them.
Talking smack on the online and
on the internet, and they beat them all up. So
admit it, that was one of the best parts of the movie.
Very funny, yeah.
It was a good movie and all told, and that was just, that gets your catharsis just out there. Just melt all the way. Yeah, okay, on to more mainstream things then.
Okay.
How was your Halloween? What'd you do for fiction-related stuff this week, Josh?
My Halloween was okay. Halloween came and went, right?
Yeah, well, it was, the other day.
Yesterday, yeah, well, as of this recording, it was still the first, so yeah, yesterday. Yeah.
Just for a little bit left, but yeah.
I mean, I went to a party. I didn't manage to get into a costume. But yeah. Let me see. What did they do? I played a bit more of Dwarf Fortress. Finished up a little bit. I don't know. Should I bring this up? Speaking of, you brought up a mind-altered state of being and consuming culture.
Yes.
I was in a different state of mind the other day, a few days ago, and I went home and it was fine, and so I thought I'd boot up Dwarf Fortress and play a little bit.
Wow, Dwarf Fortress with a little buzz.
Yeah.
How did that go?
basically I ended up staring at the screen for a while, and it was something that I didn't notice before, but the game is actually kind of like it's got this like beauty quality to it, especially when you have the vanilla texture pack,
which I do prefer. I know it hurts a lot of people's eyes, but I'm okay with it. So yeah.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed just staring at the graphics.
While it was moving or while it was paused?
Some of both. Because it's got this like stark black background. It's like it's colored text on black, which is kind of cool and retro, and reminds me of the games I used to play like on my grandpa's Apple II.
Very good system.
2E or whatever, when it was green on black, or was it orange? I think it was green.
There's an adjustment. You could do an orange on black, I believe, with the 2 series.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't have known about that, but
there was just 2 little dials at the bottom, I think.
Okay.
You could have green. You could if I remember right, there was like a green and an orange. If you had them both turned up, you got white. If you had them both turned out, you had black. So you could have a black on black, white on black, green on black, or orange on black. Or some sort of weird mix that never really worked out right. It was pretty much. It should have been switches rather than like the like the scroll.
Okay.
If I'm remembering right.
Well,
even for me, it's a pretty hazy memory.
But yeah, so for some reason, I guess that came back, and then I like that it's like Dwarf Fortress is really interesting in that it takes things that aren't really meant. It's like an exclamation point or a those are used for exclamation points.
The double exclamation point is used for fire.
Yeah, that's fire. But like a quotation mark is like just grass. Or it's random grass because grass is quotations, commas.
There is a button in or a toggle you can switch over in the initial files where you can have it just be unified. But I do like the messy style of it.
Yeah.
Where it's just like littered punctuation as grass.
Yeah, so it repurposes this other. It's almost like a very artistic way of presenting. Like this is what a world looks like if you, filter it through this lens, or not even a lens, but
or if you had to like create a world, but the only artistic tools you had was a bunch of magazines, a pair of scissors, and some glue.
Yeah. But I noticed how like the pieces really pop against that black, stark black background, like the really that green sort of pops out and really shines out at you.
The green looks that much brighter and greener when it's on the black background, as opposed to just like green that you'll see for a lot of like ground areas, especially like in stuff like Minecraft, when you're just looking at like a wall of or just a floor of grass. It's just unified, like when you're doing the experimental stuff, and you're playing around on the flatland, when you're in like God mode. I think almost everyone does that, testing out a design. I want to try building this. Does this fit here? How's this look? Mm-hmm. And you just look at that same square of green repeated like 1,000 times. It's like, ugh. Like, I dig the deserts, but that sand on sand on sand for absolutely ever, just ugh.
Yeah.
Whereas the different textures and styles that you get for grass in Dwarf Fortress does help out a lot. You can make it unified through, as I said, through like switching the initial file like a toggle. But I just like the messy grass. It's so much better.
Yeah. So it took that, like you brought up that point about different state of mind in order to think abstractly, but up until now I'd always seen the Dwarf Fortress visual representation as kind of a hindrance or a problem or it wasn't good. It was like, well, I wish there was a better way, but I basically have a different way of looking at this game.
You just had to switch your perspective just a little bit, and everything comes out.
Yeah, and now that I don't have to be.
That's one of the reasons I do like Dwarf Fortress. Is like you'll hit that point, and all of a sudden, like a little switch in your brain just flicks over, and it's like, oh, I see it all. It's like what they mentioned in the Matrix. It's just kind of like I don't even see the numbers anymore. It's like blonde, brunette, redhead. It's like there we go. Dwarf, dog, dragon. Oop.
Well, I feel like I was playing in a bit of that way like before, because I was getting to the point where I felt like, oh, okay, I'm seeing a castle here, and like here's how this fits together, and like so I had that intuitive feeling of it, but I still didn't feel like, oh, this is beautiful. Like I didn't feel that until this recent experience.
Dig it.
And so I don't want to be like, oh, that's I don't want to get back to the point where, although, well, playing the game, I'll probably get back to the point where it's all sort of invisible and I don't see the quotation marks anymore. I don't see any, I just see grass. Now, I kind of like seeing the weird punctuation and just whatever else comes up, as I guess there's not too many more mysteries for me. Like, what is that? Like, because I know what pretty much everything is supposed to look like.
Well, embark on a hunted biome at some point and look at the grass there.
Okay.
It's like eyeballs. It's like literally. Apparently, the cows and all that stuff can still graze on it, but they're like eyeballs, twitching eye stalks and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah. I really don't want to know the quality of the milk that comes out of cows eating that, but apparently it's just as good.
Okay. Well,
so, yeah.
And I loaded up a bit of an adventure mode, but I didn't really do much.
It is a bit of a different game, I won't lie. It's a fun game, a weird game for the adventure mode, but it is a very different game from Dwarf Fortress.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's not bad, not bad.
But I was gonna say, like, there's one other thing that I'm still, one obstacle in Dwarf Fortress that I still haven't gotten over. Actually, I wanted to. There's another.
Okay, well,
thing
mention. We can bring it in.
And that is, I still can't visualize properly the verticalness. Like, I know you use a key to go up and down and whatever, but
and how it all fits together.
Yeah, I still don't feel
It does get
that.
a little complex sometimes, especially in the caverns. Oh God, the caverns can get complex to try and visualize.
Yeah.
It will eventually start toggling over in your brain if your brain's like mine.
Yeah.
Like, it happens to me in spurts still. Like, I had my fortress where I had the giant ice wall around the outer perimeter, and then there's the one gate coming in. And I've got some trees still left over, because occasionally I'll need to chop down a tree to get some wood. So I'm still letting them grow nice and big.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I'm not using that part of land right now, so it's not like it's really hurting me to have the trees grow. And it just occurred to me, it's like some elves were coming on in. All they were seeing was this, like, it's not like ice blocks, I imagine, are crude, not like smooth. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm working with like blocks that I've, like of stone that I've, made, in the shops, I imagine that to be smooth and fit in perfectly and nice and all that sort of thing. Whereas if it's just like a boulder I used for that, I picture it to be fairly, like rough. So the elves are coming around, and there's this rough, like gigantic wall, and then they manage to make their way in, the one, entrance on the eastern side, and then all of a sudden there's the wonderful, like a spring going on in the area where there's actually leaves and trees that they can't see from the outside, and it just kind of came on in just some sort of nice style. And because the leaves are falling down on parts of like where I've got my like ice wall, ice floor perimeter, I imagine it all as to being some sort of like natural sort of beauty intermingling with the crude forces of the dwarf and techno progress.
I like it. Yeah.
And so it didn't even occur to me until the elves came in, and I imagined through their eyes what it must look like. So
that's a good way.
Yeah, there's an interesting like switch that happens for me at time to time. But it doesn't have, it's not there all the time. Although it does really help with building stairs and all that stuff to have that 3D image in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll click for me sometimes. Like I was figuring out, like, how do I put everything together to make a nice little walk up here? Does it fit there? And then I'm at work one day, and all of a sudden, bam! It all just kind of like shook into my head for just like kind of like imagine taking a puzzle and then shaking it to pieces. And then recording that and playing it backwards. It's just kind of like how it all came into my head, where it all just kind of fit in a three-dimensional image. It's like, yes, that will work perfectly. There's room for everything there. There's even room for like a spare room here and a spare room there if I want to design something else going on for that. And it's like, oh, it just kind of hit some sort of critical mass. It just kind of popped into my head. Which is weird, because it was a three levels by 3 by 6 by 4, something about 20 space. So that was just like perfectly analyzing, like that much space, on three levels. There's like thousands of bits of information all of a sudden like congealing into my brain. Like, whoa!
Yeah.
Good job, brain. You really rocked the house on that one. I'm getting you brain food tonight.
And one other achievement I got in Dwarf Fortress was I learned how to dig through an aquifer and seal off the aquifer. So
and not just one level aquifer, 2 level.
Well, either whatever I encounter. Yeah, I have multi-level.
Well, because that's the thing. Like when you do with the multi-level stuff, you do have to like get progressively smaller as you work your way in on a lot of design styles. Especially if you're doing like the whole, like I'm just going to plunge this deep, into the shaft into the earth, and just, like puncture the aquifer levels and just, go with my dirt area through. It's kind of brute forcing, kind of awesome, really dangerous.
Okay.
But yeah, you can do multiple aquifer level clearing.
Yeah. I followed a tutorial, learned how to do it basically by following the tutorial. And yeah, although like once I got through, like it was on a test world, and I ran like, I must have made like several embarks, probably 10 or so. And
just to master that one aspect.
A few of them I messed up the thing, so I was like, well, and then it's several months in, so we start getting people like the dwarves are getting hungry and like
abandoned.
Basically, I wasn't trying to do anything else but dig through the aquifer. So
I won't lie, I had to lose a few forts just trying to figure out how to get some good above ground and underground farming set up. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm still not great at farming, but I'm okay. I can do farms.
There's a few tricks I can teach you if you need to. We'll do that off the...
Sure, yeah. But it was weird, like, once I, punched through an aquifer, I was like, yes, I did it. And then I was like, oh, okay. I felt like, I don't know, I felt a little empty after that, because I was like, oh, what's next? But I guess, I'll find another challenge.
It's Dwarf Fortress. There will be another challenge.
Yeah.
Try to domesticate a wild pet species, sort of thing.
But basically now, like, I feel like I can start a fortress anywhere in the world.
Provided there's an area that actually has some proper soil.
Yeah.
You can't, like, oh, God, there was a nice spot I would have loved to embark. It was like a cliffside mountain face next to, like, a terrifying sea. So there would have been, like, zombies coming up out of the sea. But I could have dug down in my mountain cliff face design, and it would have been really boss. But because it was just mountains and ocean and nothing where there would have been like any wood growing and anything like that.
So you need wood, yeah.
I think with the technicalities you need some soil, not like bare rock and ocean. I couldn't embark there. And the Embark Anywhere tool is not being updated as the current version.
Oh, it won't let you embark there?
Yeah, it won't let me.
Yeah.
There is a thing for that that will bypass the third-party thing that will force the embark to happen there. But it's not being updated to the current thing the last I checked. So once it does update, I may have to, do another fortress just there, just to see how well I survive against like the zombie ocean, which I think is just going to be an amazing fun time.
Yeah. Well.
Whether I win or lose, I'll enjoy it immensely.
So I think that covers what I've been doing in fiction, in simulations, running simulations.
As for me, my Halloween went pretty darn good. First time that the wife and kid did door-to-door stuff. And it was really nice because I got to actually, visit the people whose houses I walk by several times a week. Mm-hmm. And it's nice. It feels more like a community now than it has ever. So I found that to be an interesting thing that I never even expected. We did some stuff at the mall like we had done in previous years. I had a nice wolf mask. I was the big bad wolf to my daughter's Red Riding Hood. And security told me I had to take the mask off, which was kind of a bummer. But like he explained it to me like you are a full-grown adult, in a place where this featuring a lot of kids right now and no one can see your face. It's a little problematic. And so, like, unless I could prove to my, everyone that, this is my daughter, it would just be, like the sight of a guy in a mask, like holding a little girl's hand walking somewhere with her.
Yeah, but it is Halloween.
It is Halloween sort of thing, but Like, you got to imagine, at least from like the security perspective of the mall, that this is going to be a prime area for creepy, you know, like people like wanting to abduct a kid. Like this is their Christmas, right? Like there's so many kids going on, so much hassle, so many things going on. Like there's so much hustle and bustle. I could, you know, like walk out with a kid and no one would suspect anything weird of going on. Haha, and I'll even hide my face so that, you know, if it's caught on camera, no one can see who I am. Oh, the perfect horrible person crime. So, like, as soon as it, like, clued in on me, like, dude, this is a thing where it could be really problematic, I immediately took out my mask off. It's like, fair enough.
I mean,
I can
it's
undersee.
a private property, too, right? It's Mayfair Mall.
Yeah.
You know.
And I don't hold anything against them because, like, the guy came up to me very politely, explained I'm going to have to, you know, take off my mask, you know, and he explained why. And it's like, well, yeah, you know what, that's good. And the fact that security caught me, I guess, you know, I'll do air quotes, caught me so quickly and told me to take off the mask was very good. That means security was very much paying attention to everybody, especially these people, you know, like these full-grown adults wearing masks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I imagine they probably had to tell a few people, like, because if this is their policy now, like, and people on Halloween
I gotta
wear
admit,
masks.
it was a bit of a shame. There's a lot of people giving me some really admirable, oh, that's a good costume, look at that look sort of thing, you know, and all that.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, yeah, like, this is not exactly a cheap, you know, sort of mask to have bought, but it was worth every penny.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing that I learned a quick little lesson, you know, that day. That, hey, yeah, it was a good concept. My daughter's dressing up as Little Red Riding Hood. I'll dress up as the Big Bad Wolf. But when you take this out into the wider world sort of thing, especially like a complex, you know, like there's a lot of kids at the mall there, like I have to realize what I'm bringing out into the situation. It's not just me isolated. And there's something to be said about anybody bringing their work out as, you know, like from any artistic or you know, authorial endeavor.
Yeah, especially like if you're trying to do something whimsical or artsy and you take it into a world where people, you know, in the streets and stuff where you never know who you're going to encounter. Yeah, it's a little...
Yeah, there's multiple aspects to consider. And that's something that, you know, like I think everybody should, you know, like, you know, consider. Like, this work I'm grading, it might be a great work, but if I put it out in the world, like right now, in this sort of situation, will it be received best possible, or will it be, you know, like, seeing like, oh, dude, that's pretty bad. Like, I remember back in 2001, there was a rap artist who was going to release an album. And it was like, how big am I? He's from New York. And how big am I? It's like he's standing towering, you know, with his hands, you know, on like the Twin Towers. And the Twin Towers are shaking and kind of falling apart, you know, under the weight of, you know, his gigantic stature. And then 9/11 happens. And the whole concept of like showing the Twin Towers shaking as he's, you know, like got his hands on it was seen like, ooh, okay, maybe that's not going to be perceived the best way. So his album had to, you know, like get delayed as they had new cover art made for everything.
Sure, yeah.
Because they very much realized like, ooh, it would have worked well 3 months ago, but not right now. And so there was a lot of stuff that had to change. Like, I do believe the movie Josie and the Pussycats would have been much better received if it had been released in the first couple months of the year as opposed to when it did, because like it was a good, fun movie, but like nobody was really out looking for like, hey, you know what? There's been a huge national tragedy. There's probably a war going to be happening. Things are going crazy. Let's watch a nice, lighthearted comedy, right? It's like
when was that released?
It was released 2001. I do believe it was released actually right around the time.
Okay,
I think it might have been released just before the 9/11 incident, but it didn't get much traction because people were really not in the mood suddenly for a good lighthearted comedy based off of an old you know, comic book and cartoon series.
Yeah. Well, I remember like television. Well, I guess I remember hearing about sort of late night TV and Saturday. I don't know, the Letterman show. I think it was. Basically, they were, you know, they didn't know what to do after that. They were like, well, what do we, you know, do we just stop for a while or something? And I think they did, you know, stop for a little while. But then the logic they had soon after that was like, no, people have to, you know, do what they do. Like you have to
show that, we're not going to be, you know, stopping everything
that sort of
because
thing,
of this. Yeah.
Like, we're resilient. We're gonna, you know, just...
We're New Yorkers, baby.
Which is I mean, you'd think like a tragedy. Sometimes with a tragedy, sometimes you react in a way that, oh no, we have to change because this happened. But I think
when it's because they're trying to get you to change your ways, it's all the more reason to stand your ground.
That's one of the narratives that came out after September 11th was
we
that
won't let them
it was
win.
About, because America, it was like America, they hate us for our freedoms or something like that. Well, I mean, technically,
to be fair,
the attack was
there's
because
a lot of hatred based on previous actions and a lack of foresight, as well as proper consultation with the people in the area, which I will acknowledge is a legitimate issue. That doesn't mean you have fair right to knock down buildings and start a campaign of terror.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially given their I'll say muddied beliefs. If it was just a thing like, hey, you guys have been coming over to our place and knocking our stuff over for years. How do you like it if we do it to you? There was some other implications about control and going on in there that I just don't want to get into at this point.
Okay,
as much as I enjoy a good tangent, I don't want to get in on that one.
A good September 11th
what
podcast.
Their beliefs and their actual motivations were behind it. I don't think it was as pure ideological as they would want people to think.
So the actual motivation of the terrorist wasn't exactly because we have all this freedom and we were, although there was a little bit of that America has a corrupt culture and stuff like that.
They do have a me first attitude sort of thing that has caused some of the issues over the years.
Oh,
is this going to be good for America? Yes, then let's do it.
Oh yeah. But basically, like there's a string of thought in the terrorists of like, oh well, it's okay to hurt American civilians because America is very liberal and they do, they're basically all sinners, stuff like that.
There's that, yeah.
And then they let them do whatever they want. And then this is as basic stuff as just showing images on television or having fun or have like a woman whose face isn't covered or something like that on television. Like that's
she's walking around in a bikini. Look at the licentious amount of skin being shown in this program. Oh my God.
That's even another level because even America often is relatively conservative when it comes to, although we have Baywatch and stuff, but
Baywatch is I think an example they were using there to show just how sin-filled it is over here in North America.
Yeah. Although Baywatch, it's not a sinful show. Like, I mean, I haven't watched that much of it, but it's
the
just
slow motion running really accentuated jiggle physics of reality.
Yeah, but the show wasn't about jiggling. It was about people on the beach and being lifeguards.
It was about that, but let's face it, a lot of the ratings did come from wanting to see those shots as it goes. And there just happened to be a story attached to it, so hey, yay.
Maybe, but I think the success of Baywatch, I think people should give the writers more credit and less credit to, not that, Pamela, she's knockout gorgeous. So I don't want to say don't give her credit, but at the same time, I don't think it's all about just people only tuned in
credit
for the looks. Yeah. I think it was actually a well-written show and
not decently.
Well written. Anyway, I'd have to maybe go back and
if nothing else,
review it just to see. But it was fun. It was a fun show. So.
But you can't deny that the ladies, it's like Xena. Would it have been, as popular if she wasn't, running around, outside of in something a little bit more traditional for fighting as opposed to the hoplite skirt outfit?
Well, except the thing about Xena is that I don't think it was
Wonder
as
Woman
popular
have been
as
popular if it wasn't for her one-piece outfit.
Because Baywatch was a whole different level from something like Xena.
Would Kevin Sorbo's, Hercules series have been as, well received, if it wasn't for the fact that, there was a number of beefcake shots going on there too?
I guess
we'll never know. It wasn't the only reason that it was popular, but it did help.
Okay, yeah.
A little something for everybody.
All right. Wait, how did we... Oh, another tangent.
Because you have to realize, when they're putting Baywatch out to North American audiences, it'll be received one way, but when you put it out to the world at large, you have to realize that there's other things people are going to see it in other ways.
Oh, yeah, of course,
yeah. So it's something for everyone to take heart and listen to, because, we're trying to put out a nice podcast here, and we just we assume it'll go out to people who will enjoy it and watch it. And I think we've been aware of the larger scene, but I don't think we're upsetting anyone from talking about ideas in ways of like critical thinking. I don't think there's any movement that's going to see us as a horrible evil for trying to help, thinking, and then, digesting your fiction as we do.
Maybe like cults might.
Yeah. But they're probably, so, tied up on like internet control that like we're not going to be an issue.
Yeah, we wouldn't be the top of their list, I don't think.
If we are, like, thank you for thinking so highly of us.
I imagine like maybe North Korea would be like, no, you can't think for yourself.
Yeah, but I mean, like, how much fiction does the average North Korean get a chance to partake in?
I think they have official state-sponsored like movies because Kim Jong-il was a big movie buff. I don't know if Kim Jong-un is also, but...
Well, he's a movie buff, but did he let his citizens see the movies?
Yeah, I don't...
Yeah, that's the big question.
Well, I think he did, he had specific, the government had specific approved North Korean, propaganda stuff that they would... And it might have been everyone's required to watch it.
You think they got a chance to watch Abbott and Costello?
No. Well, the North Korean people, no. But... Kim Jong-il,
I don't know if the humor would really translate.
Had an extensive his own movie library, and he had he
probably had
North
some
American. Probably did, yeah. And some Japanese film too. And do you remember the story? He kidnapped a Japanese director who was.
I had heard that, yeah.
And it forced him to make films like North Korean propaganda films. I don't know if that director ever got out, or I don't know that
he's
story.
Still there, yeah. Don't know the end of that anecdote. But yes, as for fiction this week, I've been getting into the Halloween event for the Secret World, and I'm really enjoying it because it's effectively being released in stages as we can solve the riddles. The rider will come, basically, the rider on a pale horse, war, famine, pestilence, death, sort of thing.
Okay.
Will come into a zone, and you'll have to kill some creatures, and that'll help light candles. Once the candles are all lit, he'll summon a beast. You defeat the beast. You potentially get some lore and some goodies. And then what's happened from killing these beasts? Not all of them are easy. Apparently, in some areas. There's like ghosts, like a husband-wife ghost, and you have to kill both of them within 1 second of each other, or they'll pop back alive again. Rather difficult unless you've got a bunch of people with you to do some overwhelming DPS, right? Mm-hmm. Other ones are fairly easy. I was over in Tokyo, and their werewolves were the easiest thing to defeat in the zone because they don't have the shields up, and it's just a nice simple tank and spank, sort of just just do enough damage to it and avoid the getting hurt. Mm-hmm. But through that stuff and what the monsters there dropped gave clues to how to empower the summoning. So if you have enough people at certain zones in each of the area doing worshipping, it will empower, and thus you'll get a bigger boss to fight that'll give better rewards.
You mean players?
Players actually using the /worship command emote in the right area.
In a chapel or in
a chapel, a graveyard, special areas that they had to solve and figure out for each zone.
Yeah.
And that was pretty boss, and that's and the empowered bosses drop different lore. That's how you get the lore for this year. It was if a boss is defeated, there's a chance that the lore will pop up. Mm-hmm. Some people are really upset about that because the lore takes on a bit more of a prevalent role in the Secret World than it does in most other MMOs. Mm-hmm. But, I haven't had a hard time so far. I mean, I might not get all the lore, but you know what? I'm enjoying it. It's like an extra bonus for me. Hey, the lore pops up. If I really want to read it, I can find it online. Mm-hmm. So it's not that huge a thing for me to have it all. It's worth 5 points to get it all this year. It's just the 5 points ain't used for much more than, I guess an EPeen measurement, how good you are at the game. But I've been enjoying it very well, and as it turns out, if you are dead when the empowered boss dies, you see his spirit going into a particular area where there's a bunch of runes that are being deciphered, and now the Pale Rider stands in Agartha, the hub area. You /bow to him, and you get a new mask and all that, and it looks like there'll be a separate little raid event going on later on towards the end of it.
Okay.
So it's being released in stages, and I've been really enjoying that. But between that and actually going and fighting the Cat God, which has been an event since 2012, like a little dungeon you go into, I have learned the higher end bit of the builds.
Building your character and choosing
building
abilities.
the what skills and talents and stuff I've got, because the empowered bosses have a shield that prevents half damage. So not only do they have like 30 million health, I think it is, but they're only taking half damage from what you do. So it's effectively 60, unless you have what's called a purge on them. And if you purge on an enemy, it will get rid of one of their bonuses. And this shield, if you can get 20 purges on it and a tally counts up, then the shield gets removed, you're dealing full damage. And so it's like, wow, I could be really helpful in this fight, in addition to just dealing damage, if I could switch my build a little bit and get some purge worked in there. So I'm going to have to figure that out. I am working on the part of the skill tree right now that will really help me with that. Because not every weapon has a purge ability involved with it. But there are passives that you can equip, in so that, you can make it happen. So I'm learning how that goes. I did a 2-man fight on the Cat God. There was no tanks, there was no healers, just me and some other guy dealing damage. And I was getting attacked because I was dealing more damage. I was getting, some nasty little like claw marks on me. I was getting bleed effects. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? If I could get rid of these bleed effects, I would just be able to just sweep on through. I could effectively tank this dang instance, man. If I could just get rid of these things. And that's called a cleanse, where you get rid of a negative thing from you.
Yeah, so buffs and debuffs. A buff is a positive, a debuff is a negative, or like a curse.
In this case, for the werecats, effectively, I'm fighting, it's a bleed effect, a damage over time debuff. Yeah. If I could cleanse that off of me, I could just keep on rolling out the damage. Not have to pause for a second, use my one heal, thing I've got going on there to heal myself up, and it takes about 45 seconds before it returns. Okay, I'm good to go now. So it has caught me to thinking the higher end of the builds, because in the Nightmare level difficulty, which is the next tier I'd wind up going to, having that sort of stuff in your build is critical and essential. It's not enough for it's just the healer that does all this stuff to get rid of all the debuffs off you. You're going to have to take on some responsibility. It will have to be your own thing like this. It won't just be the tank's job to get rid of all the positives off of the boss and all the buffs. It'll have to be yours as DPS as well. So as the DPS thing has gotten into my head, I can't brute force my way through the game.
Okay.
I can't tailor the game to my build. I'm going to have to tailor the build to my fights. And so now I'm starting to really think about this now, because I could be really helpful in these things to help get rid of the buff and to deal on the real damage. I could tank this instant if I could cleanse. So I'm gonna go on there, when I get some spare time, and I'm gonna look up what if I could just tweak my build and just switch one thing out and put in this that'll help cleanse me. Maybe that's all it takes. Maybe I'll have to do a little bit more reworking than that.
When you're talking like abilities and powers, like are these?
I have 7 active abilities I can use for buttons. I do this one, and I shoot a guy, and that one builds up some resources. I can build up 5 resources based on each weapon I have. These are builders and consumers. And the standard build for most people is at least one builder that'll build these resources on both your weapons, and then 2 consumers. One that'll blow out from one weapon, one that'll blow out from second weapon. So I have my main character's build is assault rifles and blood. And assault rifle is kind of interesting because not only is it good as DPS, it also works as a healer thing. So you can do some really good leech heals where the amount of damage you do helps heal you through shooting enough times with your assault rifle, which is something you really don't see in a lot of other MMOs. This damage dealing heal build style, which I think is just absolute tops.
Okay.
Yeah. Assault rifle. It's that's a healer's weapon, of course. Yes.
Huh.
Why would you not think that's a healer's weapon? And blood, which is actually also could work for healing in that it forms shields on you. And so I've got a a style of build where what I'll do is I will do a sniper shot, which deals a nice amount of damage. I'm dealing like 4,000 damage a hit with that one, and it will make the enemy vulnerable to magic. And then I shoot a few times with my assault rifle. That gets a bleed on the target. And then I fire off like a blood bolt. It's just like a ball attack from my blood thing. It deals damage. It deals more damage if the target is bleeding, and it deals 20% more damage because I've got the my sniper magic vulnerability applied onto it. And so I'm able to do some real big damage off of like some decent skills. They all have synergy with each other. And then I've got something for an impair sort of thing. If someone's coming at me and I want to pause them for 5 seconds, I got a button for that. And then if I need to heal myself, I got a button for that. And then over on the 8th button, I've got one for like a chainsaw. I should probably be switching it out to rocket launcher if I'm going to be fighting bosses. I'm not going to be up close to too many of them. So it's a better 8th button sort of thing. And then I've got passive stuff where I have a button like every time I deal a frenzy attack, that's how I get my bleed. I bleed the target. And my builder is a frenzy attack, so every time I attack with my button 1, there I am bleeding a target. I've got this debuff applied onto him.
Okay.
And then I've got other stuff that applies whenever I do a penetrating hit, and I'm fairly like skill focused for my stuff. So maybe I can take out one of my effects where if you penetrate, this effect happens, and I'll apply if you critically hit a person or if you penetrate, you apply a purge or you apply a cleanse on yourself.
So when you're saying about a build,
it's 7 skills for active, 7 skills for passive, and then if you have auxiliary weapons, 1 extra.
So you can't just earn more and more abilities and skills. You have to trade out abilities and skills and lose.
My main character has 90% of all the skills learned, but you can only use 7 at a time for active and have 7 working for passive.
Okay.
And that's the deck that you build for yourself.
Okay.
And that's because, my goodness, there's so many builds. If there was a button for everything, oh my goodness, I couldn't see what the heck I'm shooting at. There just wouldn't be room for anything other than all my buttons.
So in a way, you're still always kind of brute forcing because you only have so many buttons.
But that's the thing, is as long as you're not fighting a person, you can switch your build out mostly at a moment's notice.
Okay.
If you have a preset build in there, you can just do that. And I'll open up the inventory screen for this. I'm going to go for my, this build to that build. And I do have alternative builds set up. Like I've accumulated enough junk, stuff going through dungeons that I have gear for tanking and gear for healing. And I've got a nice little build situated out for both of those. If I wanted to, I could be a healer. I could be a tank. I've never tried to do so, but I could do it. And there's nothing that's considered, like it has to be this, it has to be that. There's some very good ideas and some things that work very well. But then again, you can tailor up to I prefer doing things this style, so I'll do it that way. And so that's something I've really learned this week, and it's something that you've managed to learn this week. Is I guess it's the first lesson of Tao. The first lesson of Tao is that the Tao that is called Tao is not Tao. What Tao really is cannot be actually said. You have to learn it and understand it, and it cannot be expressed in words. And so what I try and teach you for Tao is only an approximation thereof. It will help guide you along the way, but when you know it, it can only be known. It cannot be said and taught to another person through words. Which is a really deep thought, going back to your stoned ape, my stoned ape hypothesis, I guess. In this case. And that, it's something that you cannot even express through words. It's deeper than that, man. You need something that'll stone you when you're stoned to get that, man. To have a word that'll get you the concept. And I think that's really profound. That by playing these video games this week, we have managed to learn the essence of the Tao. You had to learn.
Okay, well, you didn't get to that second rule. What is the second?
The second rule of Tao is that there's a proper way of doing things, and that you can't just smash your head against every obstacle that comes your way and brute force it. Sometimes you have to shift, and sometimes you have to maneuver. The best way of dealing with somebody's frontal attack is to sidestep it and just let them continue on going.
Okay.
Sort of thing is some, like at a certain point in time, you have to realize, there's nothing to be gained by being so tough. You let the person punch you in the face. If you dodge their punch, then you are doing so much better than not getting punched in the face, correct?
Maybe, but maybe standing there and taking it also gives you an opportunity to hit them. So it's possible.
Well, in that case, I guess you're going to have to weigh your factors. But generally speaking, you're probably better off not getting punched in the face than you are by getting punched in the face. And that is one of the essence of the martial end of Tao, is that what you want and what is best might not always coincide. And so sometimes you have to learn to do what's best as opposed to just doing it as you have been.
Okay.
It's switching tactics, which is something I think is supposed
adapts to your circumstances. Okay,
adaptive strategies.
Yeah.
And so that's something we've both wound up learning through playing video games this week. You've learned that you can't just, I'm just going to dig a hole in the dirt and that's going to be the start of my, dwarven fortress.
You got to get through that aquifer in a very specific way.
So you can design a wonderful fortress and have all these things planned out, but as soon as you dig down and hit that aquifer, that plan is changing because you can't just continue whatever you had, because, now I've got to change things up. I've got to make things work for me now in this new plan. I've got to adapt. And I've learned it's I've got a good, spec going on right now. I've got some good weapons for it. My weapons are just shy of top end gear. The only way to increase their quality right now would be going into the Nightmare Dungeons and getting the random stuff that would increase it by just a smidge more. So I'm doing pretty good on that stuff, but I'm learning right now is the skills I've got of bringing in there. I'm going to have to learn how to change. I'm going to have to learn to maneuver around, because I had a hard time getting just to doing this 2-man dungeon because I kept having to pause because I was bleeding. It's okay, just wait. I'm bleeding. I'm nearly dead. Okay, I can heal myself up with the one button, and now I'm only half dead. And I hope I'm dealing enough damage to do a little leech heal off of this thing that I get, my health back. So that my gains outweigh my losses. But if I had a single, sort of reliable cleanse on myself, I wouldn't have to worry about these bleeds. It's okay, whatever, you scratch me up now. Haha, now I'm not scratched. Bam, you're dead. On to the next one. That would have been so much easier. And so, that is a lesson that people have been trying to teach other people for thousands of years now. Tao isn't some new age movement. This is a classic old thing.
Okay, yeah.
And this is something that the very fundamentals of martial discipline is how not to get hit. I mean, you can be wearing full plate medals, armor, but it's still going to be kind of better off for you if you just don't get hit by that sword that's coming at your way, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's one of the tactics for battlefield strategy too. If the enemy's rushing you here, the best part to be is not there. At least not be vulnerable.
Now this is Sun Tzu. I think you're pretty much quoting Sun Tzu. Yeah.
Is you don't want to get struck where you're weak. You want to get struck where you're strong. You want to strike the opponent where they're weak. You don't want to strike them where they're strong. That's not even Sun Tzu. That's you're pretty certain you can go back, before Sun Tzu, you need to find the fundamental thing, like Stone Age people say, hey, maybe we shouldn't attack the mammoth in the front. Maybe we should do a side attack. I remember some stories about the First Nations people over around the place called Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. I'll repeat that slower. The name of the location is Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. Do you know why it got its name?
Because there was a story, or it was commonly believed, and I don't know if this practice actually happened, but that the method of slaughter for buffalo herds that they were sort of keeping and following would be to cause a stampede and cause them to rush off a cliff and fall and die. And
so that their head would be smashed in as the buffalo jump off.
Yeah.
There is some evidence that this is true. They found a number of broken bones for that indicate like heavy trauma. Okay. And the tribes say, yeah, we really didn't want to have to fight every damn buffalo, so we just kind of like spooked them until they kind of ran where we wanted them to run, and then they just kind of ran off the cliff, and then we ate the meat from the bottom as we processed the corpse. And that was a very good, effective way of getting a lot of good meat very easily and effectively. Like that. You don't need Sun Tzu to tell you, like, hey, if you can find an easier way of defeating your enemy and getting the profit with less threat to yourself, that is a good way of doing things. And yet it's weird that it's something that we constantly have to be teaching each other, like, to not just like, okay, yeah, you're a strong guy, go up against that buffalo right there, just run up against him, and no, you're...
Well, I mean, because we're always creating new humans who need to learn basic stuff like their alphabets and their 1, 2, 3s. So.
But you'd think, like, as soon as you get an option, it's like, hey, what if we didn't have to fight this giant creature for its meat? What if we found a way that it would kill itself and then we just eat its meat? Wouldn't that be easier?
Modern society, we don't have to think about killing the things that we need to kill because we have a system of, there's an industry that does that for us, and there's people in that industry who teach the next generation in that industry, and basically...
But that applies to a whole lot of things out there, doesn't it? Where it's not a matter of just like, okay, this didn't work well, let's do it harder. Instead, you have like, the thing is like, you have to teach a person, it's like, hey, if you're having trouble with this, why don't you try a different strategy? Why don't you see what's making it so hard and try to find out if it can be not that hard? Like, I have to teach that to my daughter. My parents had to teach that to me as just a fundamental concept because, like, it's like, okay, that didn't work, I'll try harder. Does that work? And it's just like, after a certain point, like, maybe you should realize that, like, changing tactics. Why is humanity so dead set on doing the same tactic repeatedly, just with more force until it succeeds?
Well, that's a good question. Like, what do you think it is about our brains that makes us sort of want to repeat something we already do rather than, step back and take a moment and
what if I tried
reassess?
A smarter situation for this?
I suppose, like, one disincentive is that the new tactic you use, it's probably going to be a bit clumsy, and, well, because when we develop, like, ways of doing things, a lot of the things we do, we get better at them because we repeat. Like, this is why we can
That is true
improve.
For a lot of creatures. I mean, songbirds get better at singing by singing repeatedly, and there's actually a thing where they do it in their sleep. It just like switches off where they effectively practice singing in their sleep mentally, and then they just wake up the next day a much better like singer.
And
there's some evidence we can do that with our own brains too.
If you've read Malcolm Gladwell, or because he popularized the idea of spending 10,000 hours doing the thing that you really want to get good at.
That is 10,000 active hours, not 10,000 passive hours. If you're not like trying to be a better eater, after 10,000 hours of eating stuff, you're still going to occasionally bite your cheek or have some food spill out, or take a drink of water and have it come spilling down the side sometimes.
Yeah, okay.
So but there is a difference between 10,000 hours of doing something and 10,000 hours of trying to get better at doing something.
Okay, all right. Well, I didn't want to get in.
So it does bear like a thing.
Just
because you're 10,000 hours old doesn't mean you're a master at whatever the heck you've been doing for all that time. I still have a hard time sleeping and getting to sleep sometimes, and I'm pretty certain I spent 10,000 hours trying to get to sleep over my life.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Trying to get to sleep?
Admittedly, sometimes it's been rather hard for me to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not
for
the best
one reason or
either.
another. I'm getting better at it because I'm consciously practicing the act of like what it's like, and I'm like when I am falling asleep, I'm realizing the science is like, okay, it feels like this, and my mind's like this, and then I'm asleep, and then if I can remember that the next day, and then when I'm going to sleep that night, it's just like, okay, it was like if I did this with my brain where I effectively shut my focus off and everything just kind of, there I go, and I'm sleeping again.
Well, I can tell you this, like what I do to get to sleep is basically I feel sleepy around the same time. Fortunately, right now I have a job that kind of works with this, because I don't feel sleepy till about 3 in the morning. But then if I try to stay up after that, it'll affect me for the next week. I'll stay up till now I'm staying up till 4, and so on and so forth. But if I go to sleep when I feel that sleepiness and just maintain the pattern, then that usually, I can sleep 3 till 11. That's 8 hours. And then I go to work in the afternoon or evening, so it's fine. Wait, what was my point about that?
Is that you have a tactic for your sleep style?
It's not an immediate tactic. Like I can't make myself like what you're talking about.
There are
lie down.
some people who are so well practiced at something such as falling asleep that they're like, okay, I can put my head down and they're just sleeping right away. They're just that well versed at all the things we'll consider falling asleep like a 7 key sort of thing. You gotta turn 7 keys to fall asleep, right?
Okay.
And the first thing you gotta do is close your eyes. You're not gonna fall asleep properly if you have your eyes open.
Yeah.
You gotta be in a relaxed posture, sort of thing. And this is stuff like a lot of people take for granted for the first couple steps. But then you gotta make sure that you stop thinking so actively and critically, and that's the problem I still am working at. Is turning that key there. Where I've got to effectively shut the focus off in my mind and just let it wander and just kind of zone out.
Yeah. And
so that's the key that's kind of a sticky lock for me. Whereas some people, it's it's so easy for them. They hit the pillow and it's there go all 7 keys and they're asleep. And so yeah. So
how did we get on sleep? So we
about
2 tangents
about
later.
Learning the 10,000 hours.
So yeah, you asked the question of why don't people
why do they keep doing the same thing just harder and harder?
Yeah. So that's my theory.
I have a theory. It might be the fact that we are from a race of apex predators. Whereby, if it was prey, maybe the act of dodging and trying to escape something would lend us to more styled, mentalities where it's okay, you got to switch up your tactics based on what's pursuing you. Whereas for us, it's this is our prey, we do this to get it and eat, and that's how we survive, so we'll do that. And if we don't get it, we'll just do it harder until we get it. Because as a predator, that's kind of your attitude, right?
Yeah. Well, we've talked about that before. Humans are very... we're good at walking long distances. We have endurance.
Well, compared to other animals, sort of thing. Like you might get tired. Oh my God, I've been walking for a half hour. How am I descended from a race of people that are apparently really good at walking? Dude, walking for a half hour straight is actually a pretty good accomplishment for most animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They'll stop, they'll browse, they'll graze, they'll do other stuff. They won't be consistently doing just this one thing. Especially when it's something that's draining. Oh my goodness, the amount of stress we can handle is we do one thing. You'd think we were almost built for work. Okay, here's the thing. If you're planning on writing a movie where humanity was designed by aliens for something, don't make it be we were designed for food, or we were designed for, to extract our essence for, immortality's sake, or whatever you're going to wind up using. Design us to be, good at repetitive tasks for long periods of time. Because that's what we actually really excel at in relation to other animals around us. We were designed for simplistic, easy labor. We're cheaper than robots.
Yeah.
And smarter than monkeys, and that's kind of where our sweet spot is.
Yeah.
So there you go. If you're writing a thing like what did the aliens design humanity for? What grand nefarious purpose? It's basically, fast food, stuff, and working at a factory where you're doing repetitive motions. That's kind of what we're for.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess the point you're making is
why do we
adapt.
keep doing that? Why? What's the thing? Is that's why we keep doing one thing over and over again. If we were a prey species, we'd have to okay, this is what's coming against us. This is what works well against them. We've got this thing coming after us. This is what works well against them. But as predators, we're this is our prey. This is what we prefer to do for it, and we will do this as hard as possible until we kill it and get our sustenance. So we're coming at it from if we do this thing hard enough, we'll get rewarded.
Yeah.
Now it's so deeply ingrained in our genetics that it affects our mentality.
Now, here's another problem, though, socially, is that, like, imagine you have a group of humans working at a task, and they're trying to accomplish it, and they're all sort of doing the same thing because they're working together, and they're all, working, and they're like, hey, let's work together. But then one guy is, like, sitting in a tree, and he's thinking, there's a bit of a stigma against that because they're like, hey, man, like, why aren't you helping out? You're not contributing.
Until you realize that, like, the task they're trying to do is move, like, a heavy, like, boulder somewhere, like a big old slab of rock, and he's like, what if we had a bunch of logs so that instead of, like, pushing against the dirt, we could just roll it on logs? Or it's just like, what if we put this on a raft, like a big raft with, like, high sides, and then just float it down a river so we didn't have to push it. The river would just float it down. And everyone's like, oh, God, you saved us so much hassle. Like, okay, let's get Stonehenge built now. Woo!
Well, at the same time, though, maybe, like, sometimes that guy might be a crackpot, or his idea for a raft
historically,
might
there hasn't been a role for this sort of pre-scientist throughout society.
Well, I mean,
it's helped out society, it's helped the progress, but it's not like you go back in time and see like, yes, this is the 4th dynasty of the pharaohs, and this is when his scientists realized the effects of flooding a land and then letting it dry to determine how level the land was.
They had advisors, they had magicians, they had philosophers, whatever you want to call them. They had and that was designated thinkers.
That was just for them. It's not like there was like a thing in this for the average man out there where it's, like, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to be a scientist. Like, oh, yeah, that must mean you're going to work for the king. It's like, I'm going to be a scientist. Like, oh, good, you will help find solutions for anyone who has problems within the field of your specialization, which is what we have now. I mean, like, I use the term scientist, but really the term is like, experts, engineers and stuff like that. If you have a problem, chances are in the phone book that you'll find someone, if you still use the phone book or whatever, you will find like a person whose job it is to help you find the easiest way to get that done.
Yeah.
It'll cost you a little bit of money, but it'll make it a lot easier for you.
And you need, because you can't just have one person come up with an idea and that's like, oh, okay, this is our solutions guy, we'll always turn to him for solutions, because often solutions will end up disastrously, like you were talking about building a raft or something. Well, what if you built a raft?
But he didn't take in place like the amount of like water this every stone would displace, and thus he forgot to say build high sides on it. So it's just like a bunch of like logs, and I was like, oh great, now we got the things underwater. We can't even breathe as we're pushing it, and there's a whole bunch of stuff strapped underneath it. Way to go, Tinkerman, go back to your damn tree.
Exactly. Doing the same thing that you've always done, proven like, it
don't
feels
get me wrong.
Right
like the build I have in the Secret World has gotten me to where I am, where it's being successful enough.
You could still play and still like get a lot out of the game.
And I have. I've been able to help out, like by dealing damage to these, empowered bosses, and I've been able to finish the dungeon with just one other guy in the Cat God.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be a lot easier if I was just to tweak by learning these little things that before this last week had not even occurred to me. It's like, okay, I buy the skill. This looks like a healer thing, but I'm doing DPS, so whatever. And that's the concept of no, you're going to have to take some of this onus upon yourself. If you want to help out, you're going to have to do more than just, splatter the guy with your magic bullets and your magic, blood ball. You're going to have to see, this is what this fight is going to demand. So when I get the spare time, I'm going to have to see what I've got for purges so that I can help on out with these battles so that, the damage idea will be full damage, not half damage. That's how I'm going to help out dealing all my damage. By putting these purges into place, man.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is there's sometimes like the weapons I have, I could swing them to use as a healer, but they're not going to make good tank stuff. I could make it work, but it wouldn't be optimal. So I'm going to have to learn how to if I want to do it, because the Secret World has this great thing called the Gatekeeper, where if you want to get into the Nightmare Dungeons, you have to prove it in a one-man solo instance. You get to choose which role you want to take. If you're a healer, it'll put it in like certain circumstances whereby you will have like the gatekeeper, and then there'll be some like green guys helping you out, and like one green guy will be fighting the gatekeeper, and another green guy will be fighting the gatekeeper from further away, but in like a circle of fire. You know the old thing, don't stand in the fire, it will kill you. As a healer, you are going to have to be expected to help heal the guy up there who is, fighting the main boss, as well as this dope here who's standing in the fire. And you got to keep them both alive. So it'll put you through your paces to make sure you're actually good enough to make sure you're not wasting everyone's time in the nightmare level dungeons.
So who came up with these builds?
Largely, I built my own build.
You do your own build, okay.
I remember reading on the forums, it's like, oh, hey, like this sniper thing does a whole lot of damage and seems like it'd be a lot of fun. It's like, oh, yeah, I dig that. And it's like, okay, but it really works nice as, like a starter. Like, I get the guy from far away because he's got the longest range attack in the game. So it's like, as soon as I see the enemy, I can basically target that poor bugger by shooting him. And that opens up for this. Okay, so that means he's now like vulnerable to magic. What else do I have? Like, oh.
So your method of developing tactics or of developing a build includes getting principles from the internet of like what people are talking about, what's good and what works in certain situations.
Or someone says like, oh great, this will be great for this build here, man. I can't wait for that. I'm like, oh, what build are you talking about? Oh, it involves these skills. Well, let's see. Do I like these skills? Okay, it's not exactly my style. I do dig this one. Oh, this one is a magic effect. I like that because it works with the synergy I get from the vulnerable to magic that this other one causes. But it deals more damage if the person I'm fighting is underneath like a damage over time debuff. Well, this one here I'm using for my main attack, I can have as a frenzy, which means I can apply this passive skill, which will always apply whenever I deal my damage there, which means I can get the most damage out of that, and that's where it all sinks in together for synergy. And then there's a few buttons I have, like I don't need all 7 buttons. Like usually I'm spamming 1, 2, 3, and then I have my 7th button as an opener, and that's really all I'm doing. But then I've got the button 4 for the emergency healing in case I need it. And then I've got a button 5 to stun a guy in case I need that. And I've got a spare button there. And those are the ones I have to go out and about and change things up. Sometimes I'm doing a mission that requires me to draw blood from a vampire. They're not willing to stand still for that. So I have to stun them for it. And I've got a button that'll stun that. And then they're stunned for 5 seconds. And then I'll push the other button and I get that. It's also nice in case if there's a guy who's building up a really big attack, like this attack will kill me, and then I stun you, and so that attack that they're building up to just gets wasted off there, and I'm able to 5 seconds, and then if they want to try it again, they'll try it again, I suppose. Maybe it blows out, they can't do it again for another minute. So I can impair their abilities that way, and that's how I've built up what I have.
Okay, yeah, so you do it, and let me ask you this, like, experimentation, like when you build a build and then you test it out almost immediately, right?
Well, sometimes, yeah, I'll just, it's like, oh, you know what if I try this, and then I'll just back myself over into a nice little safe area where a monster's not going to walk up behind me as I'm doing things, and switch this and that out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it's a process of there's a little bit of empirical research going
That's how I do it, though. Like they do have areas where you can go in safety, and here's a bunch of monsters just standing still. Like where you can test things out. Like a training room, and I can go in there and try some stuff out there. I just haven't done that. I tend to work better on the fly. But if you're the kind of person who wants to I want to build this deck from scratch. And here's what I've got here, and here's what I got there. How am I going to make this happen? And in that case, that's probably going to be the room for you. As you go about things and you read everything up nice and slowly and, slowly devise it all together. I've been more about taking a build, tweaking it until it's better, tweaking it until it's better, and then I get a finely honed machine out of that. But it's not the best, and I can do better than that. So I'm going to really get going on it.
Right.
But as the thing is like I've had to learn to switch things out. Like what worked well for me in the earlier stages wasn't working well for me in Transylvania. I had a leech frenzy sort of thing going on there where like every time I hurt the enemy, I gained some health on that. but things weren't working well in Transylvania because they were knocking me over and stunning me and doing stuff. So I had to switch out my stuff and tweak it out. And it's like, okay, this attack doesn't take me, like quite so long, so I can get off the 3 shots quick and easy, as opposed to the healing one there. So if I'm doing the Cat God one, I might want to switch back out because there's not a lot of enemies doing the stuff where I can work with the attack that takes me longer to get. Like there's one attack, I just shoot off right away. There we go, good and done. There's another attack, it takes me a second to aim and then I shoot, but I gain healing off of it. So I gain that nice benefit off of it. But it doesn't work on every build. So I might want to switch back to my previous one if I'm going to do that cat dungeon again.
Okay, all right.
So, but here's the final thing. Just before we get too far into our length. This isn't always the way that video games have gone. Like, I remember back in Diablo 2, like if you had a hell qualifying build that would take you to hell difficulty, you'd have to really work at it and make sure you get it right. You put one skill in the wrong area and all of a sudden, bam, your entire build has gone to pot. You can't undo it. You can't respec. You basically got to start from scratch. They didn't allow respecs. And I remember some older game stuff where, like, if you didn't get this item back here, you can't defeat this boss over there. So you're basically pooched. Stuff like Mega Man, you really couldn't defeat this boss unless you defeated the other boss first.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you think this is, the fact that you can learn these lessons, of Tao, and tactical, adaptive strategies, from the older games, or do you have to learn just being really prepared from the older games, or is this something like an emergent property that has come about from we don't want to create a game where someone gets stuck and frustrated and then stops playing because they can't win. So by preventing this no-win situation, they've created a different set of circumstances whereby you learn these weirdly profound lessons for life. If you're having a hard time dealing with it this way, try changing your style. Is that something? Am I just sounding crazy on that?
Well, were you asking a question or what?
Yes. Is it something? Is it like an emergent property of us learning how to change our styles and learn these extra lessons from the new there is no actual way to lose sort of game? So not lose, but this no-win situation is being avoided. So thus you have I have to learn how to prepare for everything. Rather than just I can't win this, I'm going to have to start all over again.
Well, yeah, I think designers have figured out that gamers, it's like I'll point out about those situations though. Is sometimes in a game, they're like, okay, we made this great game. You can play the first 5 levels. Anybody can beat these first 5 levels, and you have a wonderful, full immersive gaming experience with that. Level 6, however, is you have to find a very specific thing, and you have to get through this, and it might take you, you have to reload, not 1,000 times, but a lot of times.
Depending on how your random numbers go.
And get some random item. And then, but, the reason we make, level 6 this hard is because we want to reward those players who do the weird thing of
collecting all their
items over again. And so the completionist characters, or players, can feel special about that. But then, then they get, whenever you put out a game like that, people will complain, it was so hard, this one thing was
grindy, I couldn't believe it.
And they complain about it. They say, well, the game sucks because of that. Well, you had, you played all these other levels, but I guess
there's one quest in the Secret World I'll never accomplish, I think, because it's effectively a jumping puzzle with timing.
Oh, yeah.
I have a hard enough time getting proper time jumps on any game. The amount of dead Marios that are underneath my thumbs is monumental.
Yeah.
And so, the concept of having to jump on a time thing on small platforms and get it just right, that is just not going to happen. I am not going to complete that quest. I'm not going to get that piece of lore that's way up there with that. It is not going to be a thing.
Yeah, so,
unless I really buckle down and learn how to do a jumping puzzle.
Yeah.
Which that's going to take 10,000 hours there.
Maybe. But yeah, this is a problem that game designers have, in that can you put things in your game that are very, very hard, or a little element in your game? I think it's fine if it's an Easter egg. It's a little bit worse if it's key to finishing the game.
Well, that's the thing.
Quotes,
some people are
finishing the
complaining
game.
about like trying to do the gatekeeper quest in the secret world as DPS if they don't have a purge. I don't work with this stuff. I don't have a build with purge, and how am I supposed to win? It's like, that's kind of the point. You're not going to do well in these dungeons if you don't have stuff like this in your build.
Yeah, but is it maybe just another form of railroading, just a more intricate form, as saying, like, we really want you to use purges, hint, hint. We made these things. I think you might find them fun and effective.
You can't brute force yourself through the entire game. Maybe you should start playing tactically.
Make a battle where we require it. And
well, the thing is, there are battles that do require it, but they're behind the barrier of the gatekeeper. So if you don't want to get past the gatekeeper, then you're not going to have to worry about it.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a little like this battle like teaches you how to use the tactic, and then from there you can go on and use it some more. Sure. Well, yeah, that makes
I love that.
Sense.
The amount of people I've done in back in World of Warcraft that are just a bunch of just smack nuts, just horrible people that don't know what they're doing, but are somehow in these high-end dungeons, 5-man dungeons. Like
that was like the random looking for group tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. You will get it. If you have a good guild, then you sort of you teach each other how to play the game.
And don't get me wrong, I have seen some bad builds for tanks in the secret world, just doing the random finder stuff. Like there was one where the tank would only heal themselves and just get the target so angry at them that they would focus on that person who's constantly healing themselves. And it wound up being in a fight where damage that you do is returned on you at certain points in time. So, I wound up dying because I'm just too good at dealing damage. The healer couldn't heal me up in time. I killed myself in one shot by dealing so much damage. Whoops. And that happened to the other DPS too. But the healer couldn't deal any damage and the tank couldn't deal any damage. So they had to just kill themselves and start the fight over again because the tank had a build that was so bad at actually doing any damage that they couldn't work without DPS dealing all the damage. All they could do was effectively, say, hey, look at me, monster, fight me, as they heal themselves up.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So not exactly a good tank build, but that's, just like anybody can, sign up for that. Technically, I could take one of my alts and try and put them in some of the highest end dungeons. It's not recommended, and I'll kill myself multiple times in the attempt to do that, but it's just a basic random thing, so it's there's no barrier on that. So why don't? The only barrier to going in those dungeons is to be able to physically travel to those dungeons, and I could do a corpse hopping style to get to those dungeons and make it a thing.
Okay, so the game doesn't make it easy to get there, but I guess it's possible.
You could do that, but if you really want to get on the professional quality sort of dungeons where the people who are there who know what they're doing...
The professional gamers?
The people who take it seriously as opposed to, I guess those damn casuals, you do have to go through this, effectively trial process where you prove yourself on at least one of the 3 roles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's the thing is, there are some people saying, you should be able to fight the gatekeeper multiple times as each one because they hate it that you can pass it as, we'll say, a healer and then say oh yes, and now I'm going to do a tank sort of thing in there, and then just be a horrible tank because you've only proven yourself to be good at nightmare level healing.
Okay.
So they should say you can only take the role if you've passed the gatekeeper test on that appropriate spot for nightmare difficulty. You know what, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that way, you've shown that you can adapt on all ends of things. And,
but I mean, if you can learn, it sort of demonstrates your ability to learn the mechanics of the game itself. I would think if you're able to at least master, for example, tanking, in theory, you should have the mental capacity to read a wiki to master the other.
Fair enough on that, I suppose. But, some people are saying, maybe it would be better if we, fought the gatekeeper 3 times, 1 for each role. Just to make sure you know what you're doing for that one role. And you know what? It seems like an interesting, fun fight for me. When I haven't taken it yet, but from what I've seen, from stuff, it looks like it's a very good, hey, just make sure you know what you're doing, noob.
Well, and also, I suppose it would be fun just to have that fight in 3 different ways. That would be enjoyable to see how it goes.
To see if you can do it. So, maybe if enough people petition, it'll open up. But I have to say, as my final thought for this, as we run a little bit late, I think games have hit an interesting point where they can say they contribute more to just modern culture, and that they can hold back to classic culture because they can teach these age-old lessons of like like having to learn to do this adaptive strategy.
Yeah, I think
this Tao.
Any good video game is going to put obstacles in the way of a player that the player is going to have to sort of think and adapt to
and learn from.
Yeah, because the game just isn't fun if it's just this same button mashing, like hitting the same button over and over and over and over again.
Although there are a lot of arcades that did make a lot of money off that sort of thing. It just depends on like where your character is when you hit that button.
Yeah, there's something appealing in just grinding, and people will, I guess that's true, that people will hit the same button thousands and thousands of times with a very similar result.
am missing at least 4 letters off of my keyboard from hitting numbers in the proper sequences.
Yeah. But I guess maybe the magic formula is figuring out exactly how much of a game to make, well, repetitive or, require very much a lot of the same stuff, and how much of the game to require adaptation and new stuff. And yeah, MMOs like The Secret World can get very intricate with like how many builds you actually can make.
Because there is no class or thing. Anyone can be anything, which I think is a pretty boss concept in and of itself.
Yeah,
there are less optimal notions, but for like the average dungeon, you don't have to be optimal to still be successful. There's wiggle room there. Mm-hmm. It's only when you get to the nightmare stuff where, dude, you got to get everything together. You got to get this right.
Yeah.
You got to know your strategy for the fights, or you're not going to do it. You're not going to win.
Yeah, and I will also say, like, the very idea of nightmare difficulty is sort of like what I was talking about with bonus content, that, a normal person should be able to just have fun with the game and have a fine experience without necessarily even touching nightmare level, the top end of the game.
That's the thing. It's like I haven't. I've been enjoying what I've been doing on the free copy of my game. Up until about 5 hours ago, there was a sale going on. I got it 70% off. So for $21, I got like all content up until like now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a free game up until like this evening. And I've never touched the Nightmare content. I only skimmed the surface of the Tokyo content because I couldn't do too much beyond there. But I was enjoying all of it. I enjoyed the extra challenge that some people are hating about the Aegis system, where the enemies have shields that you have to knock the shield off before you can actually damage them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there's multiple levels of shields, and so you have to like switch things around. And so some things will happen here, some things will work there, and you really have to. And I've been told for Tokyo alone, you really have to change your build to be a much more mobile fighter than in other areas. The enemies have a lot more AOE sort of things and spam, like attacks that will follow you and things like that. So I'm gonna be looking into that one and changing my style to match it all. And I think I'm becoming better and smarter and actually even wiser from playing it and learning to have to switch up my style. I could continue to keep showing up and just like, I just keep pushing these 3 buttons against, the boss until he's dead, and then I get my loot. But I could be doing better. I could be helping everyone out even more.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah. I'm thinking that games, because we have eliminated that no-win scenario, and we're trying to make games that don't have that scenario, that you get frustrated. It's like, I can't win, so I guess I got to start all over, has taught people to learn to like, okay, this didn't work. What can I do now? Because I know there is a way to win. There is, not the possibility that there's no way to win here.
Well, we still have games that, well, maybe Dwarf Fortress isn't quite the play it like lose more slowly like Tetris.
Yeah.
Tetris, you always lose Tetris. Like
technically, there is a win in there, but you got to be really good, really top notch good to get that.
I think Pac-Man. Don't you always lose Pac-Man?
Actually, Pac-Man was apparently won even the glitched 256.
Okay.
Yeah, or 255 level. Yeah, Pac-Man's basically the same game over and over again.
But the way most people experience Pac-Man, Tetris, and actually a lot of video games is they play. Most people don't win. Like in those.
I won't lie. A
in
lot of the games I
games.
have played, it's just like, okay, I'm struggling at this until I get the better gear here, and then once I get the good stuff, I steamroll. Just before the Marvel Avengers Alliance closed down, I had some of the best stuff that money was not needed to buy. And as such, like the big end boss is like, oh god, you got to defeat this epic boss. You're like, hopefully you got everything up here, and you got this guy up to a certain level. So it's like, no, I take the damage, and then I heal it up, and I hurt them back. And then I kill everything that gets in my way. Because I got the gear that's good enough. I got this one thing here, I do it free every turn. It takes their health and it heals me up. Anyone who tries to attack anyone else hits me instead. And I've got, 2 counter attacks. I am the thorns and I will bleed you dry.
Mm.
And it was just like, that worked. It worked on everything. Except for a few specialized things where I wasn't involved in there.
So of all the, just a curious question, of all the video games you've ever played in your life, you've ever picked up and played, at least, I don't know, say 5 minutes, how many what percentage do you think you've completed, like got to the end of? I wouldn't say completed, like done everything, but just got to the intended finish line. Just an estimate.
5%.
Okay.
As I did manage to beat Mario every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them, no. A lot of them, it's just like having fun as I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I technically got to the end on the Marvel Avengers Alliance in that I, fought Odin himself.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have enough time to grind out the stuff that would get me the gear that would allow me to bypass the super uber shield to defeat him.
So this is the completionist sort of.
I got
stuff.
to the final boss sort of thing. I got all the extra tasks done, sort of things. So that was the only thing left undone. It's just like I just didn't have the time to play it. Like I would have had to be playing that game like 8 hours a day to get enough grinding to have it happen. C'est la vie. So I mean, for a lot of most of the things, like a lot of the games I have been playing, there isn't an end to it. Like Dungeons and Dragons, is there ever really an end? If I include all the adventures I've been in, was there ever an end, or was it really just like a one night of adventure sort of thing? Was there like a planned arc on that? Yeah. So like I am, I guess, apparently very fond of the open-ended games where there's no real permanent end. Like, you have beat the game, now turn it off and go do something else. Ninja Turtles games, some not the infamous Ninja Turtle game, sort of one with the bad stuff, like more of the arcade stuff I managed to beat.
Okay.
But no, like not a lot.
All right. Cool.
All right, but yes, I have to say, that's my final thought. Because we have hit this no lose condition where you can't be in a situation where you can't win, it has allowed us to think from the perspective of there's always a win. How do I pull the win out of this situation? As opposed to like, oh, I must have done something wrong, I can't win, I'll turn this game off and maybe try again from scratch later. And because of that, we have hit this point where we can learn the adaptive strategies and like, how do I change things? What do I do to get this to happen? There's got to be a way to win.
Yeah, and that makes video games just a bit more like real life, I guess.
Depending on how pessimistic your day is being, yes and no. But because of that, we are teaching the adaptive strategy that helps for much more success elsewhere in life. And so to say what people want, oh, video games can't be art, they can't be culture, I think they're hitting a much deeper vein of culture than they have been able to hit previously.
Oh, wow. Bring that up at the end of the podcast. I think we've come down on the side of calling video games both art and culture, and
when done
more.
Right. Not all games are art, not all games are culture.
Well, I think...
But they have a possibility to be when you design them smartly.
Okay.
So I think that's my final thought, Josh. If they, the great listeners out there, have a final thought they want to give to us, how would they let us know?
They can send us email, thesimulationist@gmail.com. They can send us Facebook messages at facebook.com/thesimulationist. You can friend, you might not get a friend back or a confirmation, but never know. You could try. Send us a message saying, hey, I heard your podcast. But anyways, you can comment on the Facebook page is what I'm trying to say. You can comment on our YouTube page, youtube.com/thesimulationist, and you can subscribe on iTunes, and you can write a review on iTunes. And you can tell friends in real life, And you can tell friends at the gaming store and wherever else you happen to be at bingo. Maybe there's somebody else there.
If someone's trying to win bingo through like a particularly, like hard strategy, like if I always play this card, I'll eventually win. It's like, well, what if you played 2 cards and thus doubled your odds? Or what if you tried a different style, like on how like if some people have like a huge like they got like a 3x4 set of like bingo cards as they're playing and they're going down and they're like B3 and they're doing all this sort of style like what if there was a better way of you like putting your cards so that you wouldn't have to like be going all over like a giant map of your bingo cards?
I bet you there's some serious real thought that people have put into like bingo strategies of how to arrange your cards in just the right way. Yeah, I bet you that people really take that seriously.
Look it up, man. And like send us the link if you find it. I kind of dig to know. If you know a person who's doing that sort of thing, like send them the link to this thing so we can help try and get their notion in the head about adaptive strategies. If it's not working, don't work harder, work smarter.
Okay, yeah, good enough. Well, whatever adaptive strategy you want to use. Speaking of adaptive strategies, we'll need to think of something else for this podcast. But
what's the thing? Like I would like to use the word like Tao because like it's the way of like doing things with the least amount of effort and knowing how like the cosmos kind of wants you to proceed about things, as opposed to you just doing it like this way, and then fighting against like everything in the cosmos to get your way. There's smarter ways about it, but it's really hard to use Tao as like an adjective and a verb. So adaptive strategies kind of had to be it. So
yeah.
So that's why we had to keep using the term.
Yeah, but what do you? We should do something different with this podcast. I was just thinking, like, how we're trying to, we just keep doing iterations over and over and over again.
No,
we take a new topic turn every time. So yeah. All right, anyways, that's another thing. One other thing, we are on Patreon, patreon.com/thesimulationist, just in case you want to help out with
pay for batteries or buy Josh a coffee or something.
Yeah, there are expenses, but they're not huge that go into this podcast. But it would be a little nice to have some of them covered, and also it help us psychologically to
They love us. They really love us. They love us by a monetary amount that is, can be verified on a graph or bar.
That's right. Yeah. And people would stop being like, "Why are you doing that podcast?"
It's not making you any money. It's like, dude, this one person sent me $1 once. In your face, sucker.
So that's possible. Patreon.com/simulationist.
I spent $17 to buy a frame for it. Look here, now it's art.
And I'm also on Twitter at Josh_Trelaffin, TRESLAFFIN, Josh_Trelaffin on Twitter. You can tweet at me, and you can follow me, and I'll probably follow you back. Especially if you if you write that you're a fan of the podcast or something like that, then
he'll make the extra effort. That's the smart and easy way to get him to follow you. Exactly. You don't just send him like, "Hey, follow me, hey, follow me, hey, follow me," until he does. There's smarter and easier ways.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all the things. We've done final thoughts on the things. I guess we got to sign out and say goodbye.
Yeah, you'll hear from us again next week.
I've been Josh Trelaffin.
I've been Ryan Kirkby.